I'm so sick and fucking tired of hearing about privilege. Privilege isn't being white, bonehead. Privilege is living in government housing and calling people oppressors while they pay your fucking bills. Get it? I'm done pretending that any of this bullshit makes sense. You want to talk about privilege? You want to talk about real privilege? Real privilege is wearing $200 sneakers when you haven't worked a day in your life. Privilege is walking around with $300 Beats headphones while you're living on fucking food stamps, while you're on public assistance, and it's paid for by people who wake up and grind every day. Privilege is having the latest smartphone with unlimited data and having zero idea where the bill goes because somebody else is always picking up the tab. Privilege is being able to protest every little thing that offends you without worrying about calling in sick to work because you don't have a fucking job. Privilege is being able to cheat, lie, fail over and over again in life and still get bailed out while people who play by the rules get punished. That's privilege. This isn't about race. This isn't about class. This is about accountability. We've got a culture that rewards victimhood and demonizes work ethic and responsibility. Meanwhile, the people holding everything together for the rest of society, they get taxed into the fucking ground. Their businesses get choked by regulation, and they get personally vilified for speaking up and saying that this is bullshit. You want to talk about privilege? Then start with the people who've never paid the price, but who also scream the loudest. Because they've never had to build anything, they've never had to defend anything, they've never had to carry any real weight. And the reason they get away with it? It's because we don't live in a society of strong men anymore. No. That's been dismantled on purpose over the last 50 years. Because a society of strong men would never put up with any of this bullshit. And that's exactly why they came after us first.
I hate the phrase white privilege. I think a lot of white people do. Doesn't mean it's not accurate. I don't like it because no one knows my past. I had a truck driver father. My best friend's dad was a fireman. My other best friend's dad worked for an aluminum factory. We don't feel like we had privilege because we had to work for everything we got. However, what I realized we have as white people in this country is white power. We are the largest group of white people in the most powerful, successful, financial, technologically advanced country in the history of the world. I am fortunate to be part of that class, and that class is power. Now, what has America, white America, done with that power? Well, we've taken credit for a lot of stuff that weren't ours. We've held others back so we can advance ourselves. We treated people horrifically. We bought people, brought them over here, treated them like property, and then treated them like complete shit when we said, okay, you can be an American now. We had power. I mean, we emailed a rich to the space station 15 years ago, and we've got kids who don't know when or where their next meal is coming from in this country. We have roughly 500,000 homeless people and growing, and it's estimated 125,000 of them are homeless vets. We have our freedom because these men and women fought and defended it. And yet they're homeless in the most wealthiest, powerful country in the world. What good is power, white people, if we don't use it for good? We have the cards. Why aren't we using them? I never thought I'd say this, but sometimes it's hard to be a white person when you see everyone else going around you not giving a shit. Change is hard, even for me, because it means I have to admit to myself I was wrong for a very long time. And that's a big blow to your ego. But guess what? I'm a big boy and I can take it. We've got to do better. This is America. Have a great day.
Oh my God, white people not finally realize that they never had any privilege. I've been saying it right from the day one, right? I'm not seeing any privilege, and there is nothing anybody can tell me. I've been saying it. I don't see privilege. So whenever I see some white folks saying, oh, we have privilege, oh, I see some of these other races make comments and pull out videos like, oh, white privilege does exist. For me, I am not seeing any privilege. You and a black person, you people are the same. Because you so claim as a white man to have a privilege, but at the end of the day, you can barely even feed yourself 3 square meals. So where is that privilege coming from? My bad, my bad, my bad. You people have privilege. 100% privilege. But welcome back to the channel. My name is Sonia. Subscribe, like, comment, and share. And credits belong to the original creators of every single clips and stitches we have in this episode. I want to say a very big thank you to every single one of you liking, commenting, sharing, dropping super thanks, and also joining my membership. I do not take you guys for granted. You guys are absolutely the best. And guys, with that being said, let's dive right into this video. I'll be back with commentaries. Let's go watch, guys.
White people, hear me out. I'm about to let you all know what black people mean when we say white privilege, okay? Okay. When we say white privilege, we don't mean that your life is easy or everything comes easy to you just because you're white. That's not what we mean at all. We know a lot of you all have to work your asses off just as hard as we have to work to make it in this goddamn society, right? Right. We're not saying everything was just handed to you on a silver fucking platter just because you're white. When we say white privilege, we mean you all don't get looked at the way the world views us when it comes to certain things. You all don't get judged the way we get judged when it comes to certain things. When we speak up for ourselves, we get labeled as loud, ghetto, angry, and aggressive, right? Right. But when you all speak up for yourselves, it gets labeled as courage and patriotism. And if we committed the same crime, let's just be honest, my black ass gonna get way more time than your white ass would. But nobody should be committing crimes anyway. And if it just so happened to be a situation where the police has to get involved, which skin tone is more likely to get the handcuffs put on them? That is what we mean when we say white privilege. Did that help you understand? I just want to know.
One thing that I constantly heard, always heard growing up amongst my friends was, that's white people shit. Or, girl, you going to do your white people shit. Or, girl, that is for white people. Now, for context purposes, I'm a Gen Xer. So this is back in the 70s, 80s, early 90s when I grew up. And I don't think that this was a white or black thing. I think this was a generation thing where we just always heard that's just how things were back then. That's just how things are. That's just how things is. And pretty much most of us just rolled with it. Whatever our parents said, we didn't challenge it. We just accepted it for what it was, and that's how things were, and we moved on. Now, when I say that, you know, my friends would always be like, that's for white people, that's white people shit, was more of activities and things that I would do that were deemed for white people. It was more of a cultural thing. It wasn't necessarily, we had no historical context behind anything. So I think a lot of it back then seemed to be more of a stereotype, you know, but also a cultural thing, or the difference in the culture of what black people do versus what white people. So when I say activities, I mean things like, during Christmas time, when I would go over my dad's house after my parents got divorced, he would go Christmas caroling with his church, and I would tell my friends I gotta go Christmas caroling. They'd be like, girl, that's for white people. And I'd be like, yeah, that is from white people shit, because I didn't know any black people that went Christmas caroling back then anyways. Another thing that was always, you know, I would always hear that you're gonna do your white people shit was snow skiing. So during spring break, I would go snow skiing with my dad, and they'd be like, you know, that's snow skiing for white people. And I would push back. Now, you know, I wasn't just always accepting shit. I'd be like, why is everything got to be for white people? Black people could do these things too. Tell me why. And most of the time, we'd just go back and forth, joking and laughing about it. And there was never no historical context to why these things for white people or why black people didn't do them, except for, you know, when I would push back about the snow skiing, it was like, black people don't like cold. We don't like cold weather. We're not going up on no mountain. You're not going to see us doing that. And, you know, you go up on the slopes and I don't see no black people. So kind of did fit the narrative that maybe this is just something, an activity, a sport that is more for white people, you know, than it is black people. So again, something you just rolled with. Another thing was my dad was a member of an athletic club. And back then, now they're the gyms. Everybody's got a gym membership. But back in the 70s and 80s, again, Athletic clubs were like one level below a country club. So, for context purposes, again, I never considered my family or my dad rich. He had a little money. He for most of probably my teenage years, he owned his own insurance company, so he had some money, and we did some things, but I wouldn't say he was rich. But I would go to the athletic club with him, and I would play racquetball. My friends would be like, "What the fuck is racquetball? We don't play racquetball. Who the hell plays racquetball?" Well, okay, when you go to the athletic club and you only see one black man there, and you only know of him because my dad played basketball and tennis with him, kind of fits that same, fits the narrative of this is another thing that only white people really do. The other thing was when my parents got divorced, and I was going through some things as a teenager, and I kind of discuss this more in my memoir, so you'll have to read the details of that in the book because I'm not sharing that shit on here. But it was therapy. So my dad said him, and my stepmother had to go to some therapy sessions. Now, of course, my friends were like, that's some white people shit. Now, back then, therapy, there was no mental health and wellness that we have. And to be honest, most of us didn't even start diving into that till after COVID in 2020. And so imagine back in the 70s and 80s, there was a whole fucking stigma that if you even mentioned a psychiatrist, a shrink, bitch, you were cuckoo crazy. You needed to be in a straitjacket in a mental ward somewhere. That was the stigma. And it was pretty much for rich white people. Now, again, my dad wasn't rich. I didn't think we were rich, but he did put us into therapy. And so my friends would be like, "You going to do your white people shit?" And I'd be like, "Yeah, I'm going to do my white people shit." Because I didn't know any black people that went to therapy. Hell, none of my friends knew any black people that went to therapy. And again, I didn't hardly even know any white people that went to therapy. So that was another one of those cultural differences things, or stigmas or stereotypes, you would say. Now, there was two other things that was a constant thing that you always heard was for white people. And I didn't, like I said, I used to always, I would push back on some things, but these things I never challenged. I never pushed back. I never said nothing. I never questioned, because the fear of them was so raw and real. It was unfucking deniable. And I never knew where the fear came from. I just I guess I always assumed, just based on, my friendships and everything, that, again, it was just a cultural thing that, if your grandparents and your parents didn't grow up with it or doing it, it's probably not something that you're going to incorporate into your kids' life. So I just kind of always looked at it from that perspective. But the fear was so fucking real. I always knew that there was something more to it than what it was. Just accepting that that's just how things were. Now, later in life, when I did my own research and understood the historical context behind the fear, and how it got passed, how and why it would definitely be passed down from generation to generation, it made perfect sense to me. And it's really sad. It really is. And it's also a stark reminder of how so much shit in America always circles back to racism. So if you're not following me, I would love to have you as a follower. But if not, make sure you go and look for part 2 of That's for White People, where I go into a little bit deeper about the two things that my friends were really afraid of and the historical context behind.
I'm really getting tired of the work that is done to protect white feelings. And this isn't personal against white people. It's just it's personal against systemic racism. And I'm sick of the fact that I even have to say that, right? I'm sick of the fact that when I talk about white privilege or systemic racism, white people take it as I'm talking directly to them. And by now, they should have done the work to not even be there. If you're taking it personally, then it might be personal for you, and you need to look into why that is. How do we talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion? How do we get better in this world? How do we dismantle systemic racism if every time you talk about something, you know, you have some white people coming and reporting your video for being racist when it's not? As I keep saying, talking about race is not racism, not at all. And then because evidently the people who evaluate the ones who are putting in these ridiculous claims are just as ignorant, are misinformed, are uninformed as the reporters, they take it down. It's just so incredibly frustrating. I don't think anything in my career has made me just want to holler. Well, that's a lie. A lot of things have. But this is definitely another thing that, whether it be on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, simply talking about racism can get you silenced. And where are we going to go with that? How is that ever going to help anybody? Like, if the only thing we do is protect white feelings, if that is the priority, this country is going to go nowhere. The fragility has got to stop running everything.
So here are 3 phrases I would like to never hear again from a 60-year-old white man. And it's because they reflect such an assumption of privilege and such a perspective of arrogance that they just take my breath away every time I hear it. And I had a professor once in undergrad. I have 2 quotes that and undergrad was a long time ago. 2 quotes that to this day I quote Rosemary Nudd. For those of you that know Rosemary Nudd, you know Rosemary Nudd. The first was, always order your margaritas on the rocks, you get more liquor that way. And the second was, language shapes and defines reality. So be very careful of the words you choose to use. And she's always rattling around in my head when I think about her, and when I think about what just flies out of the mouth of some people. I just happen to particularly be focused on 60-something white males. So the first is when you're in the middle of a conversation and you're talking about one thing and they're talking about another, and it's kind of okay for different people to have different life experiences. And when you say, you know what, I don't particularly like that, and you're not being critical, you're just commenting, I do not like that, but I'm glad you do. And their response is, you're crazy. And what they're saying is, because I don't like what they like, I'm somehow crazy. And so the one I ran into last night, every now and then I play around on a dating app somewhere, and I was FaceTiming a guy having a conversation, and he's a big outdoorsy, naturey guy, right? And he talked about climbing a mountain in a hailstorm, and he was so excited about his experience. Look at those beautiful horses. And that's not my vibe. In fact, I think it's a bit intrusive on what's left of nature to be kind of stomping around in it and stuff. And he's like, oh, you don't know what you're missing. I'm a 62-year-old, well-educated, white female who has traveled around the world. I've had the pleasure and privilege of access to a lot of things. It has nothing to do with what I'm somehow missing or lacking in my life experience, which is what you're suggesting. It has everything to do with the fact that I'm making an informed choice. I know exactly what you're talking about, and I know exactly what I like and don't like. And the planet's big enough for both of us to like different things. But my taste and my preference has nothing to do with the fact that you think I'm therefore missing something. And if I only knew better, I would like the same thing as you. But my favorite, my very favorite. Lovely guy. Oh my gosh, lovely, lovely guy. And we were talking about music, and he made some music reference, and that's his thing, right? He's a music guy. Look at the horses. They're beautiful. he's a music guy, right? And so he made some reference to some musician that I didn't know, and he looked straight at me and said, "What is wrong with you?" And I remember stepping back. I said, "Pardon me?" And he's like, "Well, what's wrong? What'd I say?" I'm like, "You just suggested that because I didn't know something that you think is important, there's something wrong with me. That's exactly what you just said to me." He's like, No, that's not what I meant. I said, "But it's what you said, because I don't have the same shared frame of reference, because I've chosen not to go do a deep dive in the great basis of all times. There's something wrong with me because I've chosen not to prioritize information that you happen to enjoy. And I think it's great that you know all the basis that ever were in America, but there's nothing wrong with me because I have chosen not to spend time learning the same thing." That expression, "What is wrong with you?" I cannot express how that feels flying out of the mouth of a privileged white male. The fact that because I don't know or like or understand or share a priority, that there is something wrong with me. So I don't know how, I don't know who I call, I don't know what petition we sign, I don't know what the deal is, but how do we get, and I bet we can't, because we can't get them to stop saying it, can we? We can't get them to stop saying it. I guess I can stop listening to it. I can stop them in their tracks when they say something like that and ask them if they realize what they just said. And I've done that. And you should see them backpedal. Please stop saying it.
Okay, so apparently because I'm white, I'm privileged. And I've never had to struggle. I've never had to work for something in my life. I've never had to make something of my life. I just got handed everything to me. That is absolute nonsense. And there are thousands of white people that haven't had rich daddies and rich grandparents that give them everything, and they've inherited land and inherited farms and buckies, and not all white people have got that privilege, guys. There's a lot of white people out there that have struggled and worked their butts off to get where they are. And I am one of those people. I come from a very, very poor family. We struggled. I didn't have a father in my life. My mother had to raise us, me and my sisters, on her own. Sometimes I had to go next door to eat at a black family's house that were friends of ours, Tswana family. I never had enough food. I had abusive stepfathers that abused me throughout my life. Yes, the only bit of privilege I had was my grandparents saving a bit of money for us for my studies. And I went and did my Fogasa. I went and did a course, did my Fogasa, studied a bit of conservation, but I never got a job after that. I struggled. I had to phone and beg and phone and go and visit different places and beg them to give me an opportunity. And when they did give me an opportunity, I worked my butt off. I didn't get handed over, "Oh, there's your bucky, there's your house, you're a manager now because you're white." I was 18 years old, and I got deployed into tents in the bush with Zulu guys that never spoke a word of English, and they taught me everything I need to know about the bush. And I'm still friends with them, by the way. And then I had to work my butt off. From there, I never just got promoted. I worked, I did all the rubbish jobs, picked up dog food, did whatever I was asked to do until they gave me a promotion. And from there, I've traveled all over South Africa and worked for many different companies, worked for myself, now working for myself. I've worked very, very hard to get where I've got. And that's not from privilege, guys. It's from hard work and dedication. And people say, but we can't speak, we don't know English, some blacks. Guys, I can speak multiple African languages. Not just English, Afrikaans. I speak multiple languages because I'm willing to learn and understand. People must stop thinking they're going to get handed everything to them. Because if they have that mentality, they are not going to get anywhere in life. I can promise you that now. And just because I did a last video asking black people why don't they come together and stop bringing each other down, I got told I'm white. I have privileges and I don't understand, which is absolute nonsense. I've got black friends living in different areas all over South Africa. I have a very good understanding. So
almost all of violence in America comes from men. And violence in general comes from patriarchy, white male patriarchy, and white male entitlement and privilege that has been fought against with feminism, with civil rights, and today standing up for our constitutional rights to not be slave hunted, because of the color of one's skin. I'm a white male in America. I may not be the richest, the most successful, but I have privileges and entitlement that other people don't have only because of how I look, and that is not okay. That is why it is the male responsibility, especially white men, our responsibility to stand up for not just equal rights, but equality, period, egalitarianism, where people are judged for what they contribute to society, having nothing to do with their gender, their sex, the color of their skin, their religious beliefs, but what they can contribute, how they can make our society better as individuals and the collective, the community that we barely acknowledge exists anymore because tribalism and being right over being safe and happy has taken precedence everywhere you fucking look. Everybody was talking about civil war. Everybody was talking about just a week ago, a little longer than that, because it was so palpable. And just because things calm down a little bit does not mean we're okay. We're the frogs in the pan being brought to a boil and cooked to death. And it is the white man and men in general, but especially the white man, our responsibility to say, you know what? We relinquish the entitlement that we were born with, that our dads and granddads and granddads suppressed other people in order to give us. We acknowledge it is not okay anymore to dictate value in society on our gender and color. No more. We're done. It didn't work. It's not working for more people than it is. And nobody should be standing up for it. And I'm not even talking about matriarchy. I'm talking about acknowledging the value that people contribute to society and judging each other on that merit. And the desire to be involved in community, not be right or wrong. Men, it's time to stand the fuck up and stop standing up for people like Trump, who is disgusting to people, especially women. What do y'all think?
This could cost me followers, and if it does, I'm okay, because I know I've lost the right ones. In 2024, if you don't understand that white privilege doesn't equal financial privilege, there's a good chance it's because you choose to be willfully ignorant. White privilege doesn't mean that you grew up rich or that you didn't have a hard life. It's the concept that by the mere coincidence of you being born white or white presenting, that you have an inherent privilege. You're afforded certain benefits of the doubt that not everyone gets. It's the difference from a white person walking into a store and a customer salesperson walking up and saying, "Hi, can we help you find something today?" To a black person walking in that same store with that same customer service person following them around because they looked kind of suspicious. It's the black family that can't leave their family photos hanging on the wall when they're selling their house because the home appraiser might undervalue their house by as much as $500,000. And for fuck's sakes, you've never had to apologize for being white. Had your parents fucked on a Tuesday instead of a Wednesday, you wouldn't even be you. Rather, just acknowledge that the system that was designed by and for people that look like you has never been a level playing field. I hope this made it clear. Have a great fucking weekend.
The only way the average white person can feel like they have any power in this world is by oppressing people who have less than them. These white people are not part of the 1%. They're not part of the ruling class or the elite rich. And they know this. They know they have no real power. But they're also aware that the elite set up a system that benefits them as well. So they take part in this system, despite having the same means as people of color, doing the same jobs and the same careers, making the same amount of money. The only way they can feel superior is by taking part in the oppression of people of color. Either that, or they're too stupid to realize that they're under the control of the 1% and they're just like us. So that's why when people of color talk about white privilege, the average white person gets so upset. I don't have any privilege. I don't come from a wealthy family. I had to work for everything that I have. They don't realize the system that was implemented by our masters is the very one giving them access to everything that they have in life. They feel oppressed by the ruling class, so they oppress others to feel powerful. And this is not to excuse the racism of white people. This is just to give you an understanding of why they are the way they are.
Anyways, welcome back, guys, and thank you so much for watching to this point. I really do appreciate you guys, and I literally do not take you guys for granted. So let me give you guys some few context of Black Americans' privilege. Oh, my Black sweet people, sorry. White Americans' privilege. Privilege is defined as unearned social, economic, or legal advantage that people identify as white often experience in contrast to people of color in the same society. It's not a single event, but a historical and ongoing system in America. It emerged along with the creation of social constructs of race to justify colonialism and slavery, dated back roughly 50 years ago. The core of this system is that whiteness was established as legal categories of advantage in opposition to blackness, and this advantage became embedded into American laws and culture. Now let's break it down for you guys in details. Let's talk about the colonial era in the 17th to 18th centuries, where the creation of whiteness actually began. Following the event where the divide and the rule started, right? Following the event like the Bacon Rebellion in 1676, where poor whites and black servants align, elites create legal distinction between indentured servants and black enslaved people. Laws were passed granting white servants freedom, rights, and privilege, such as the right to bear arms to receive freedom due that were systemically stripped from Africans. Whiteness was designed to give poor Europeans as a sign of superiority. I'm going to repeat that. Whiteness was designed to give poor Europeans a sense of superiority, fostering a white identity over a shared economic class identity, which maintained a stable labor enforced for plantation owners. Now let's talk about the post-revolution and the 19th century institutionalizing advantage, where citizenship started. The Naturalization Act of the 1790 explicitly restricted citizenship to free white person. Land ownership, like policies like the Homestead Act and forced Native Americans displacement, provide millions of acres of land primarily to white settlers, creating integrational wealth. White individuals, even those who did not own slaves, benefited from a social structure that ensured they were not at the bottom of the hierarchy. Here now comes Jim Crow segregation law. While separations but equal exist, legal segregation guaranteed that white communities had better schools, better housing, and safer neighborhood. White people had access to healthcare, transportation, and public service that were denied us to several black people. While the GI Bill helped many Americans, it was disproportionately applied by local borders to exclude black veterans, prevent them from accessing loan interest, mortgage, and college education that were easily available to white veterans. Redlining policy allowed white families to accumulate wealth through home ownership in expanding suburbs, while black families were restricted to areas with declining investments. Even after the Civil Rights Act of the 1964, white privilege shifts to a more internalized, structured form, where it is often described as a weightless cared pack of advantage, such as seeing one race widely presented in the media not being followed in stores or not being assumed to be representative of one entire race. Studies have shown that white people are more likely to get called back for jobs with identical resumes and face lower risks within the criminal justice. While all of this kept going on, a lot of white folks now thought that they literally have what is called the white privilege. But now coming to the modern world, where white privilege is now like a brainwash to a lot of white people. Now, life has literally not been easy, because white privilege does not mean a person's life is easy. Only that their skin color is not one of the factors that makes their life difficult. It is often unconscious. It is embedded in their daily operation of society, making it invisible to many who benefited from it. It is systemic. It is often penetrated through institutional practice like hiring, housing, and legal procedure rather than individual malices. White privilege existed during that time. Jim Crow law, redlining, segregation. As far as I'm concerned, in this present age, black people have more privilege right now than these white folks. Go into your research and come back and argue in my comment section. Okay? Credits belong to the original creators of every single clips and stitches we have in our today's episode. I want to say a very big thank you to every single one of you liking, commenting, sharing, dropping super thanks, and also joining my membership. I do not take you guys for granted. You guys are absolutely the best. And yes, guys, with that being said, with no further ado, I do like I always say in my videos, I'm going to be saying bye, and I'll see you guys in my next one. For now, bye guys. I love you guys. Mwah.